Or, if you're an ultra right-wing conservative, you go with the rich and mighty, no matter what justice says. And the scripture says, you extremes weigh on the left and the right, a plague in both your houses. You don't go with the rich because they're rich. You don't go with the poor because they're poor. You go with justice. You go with what the law says. That's the standard. And if you don't do that, then you steal. You steal that person's right of justice. Verse 16, thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer among thy people. Stealing, because you steal the person's good name, which is very important and precious. Many of us would far rather lose a lot of money than lose our good name. Good name is more important than money. You steal, you take it away. Verse 17, thou shalt not hate thy neighbour, thy brother rather, in thine heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbour, and not suffer sin upon him. Thou shalt not avenge, nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbour as thyself. I am the Lord. And now you're thinking, what's that got to do with stealing? This passage forbids hating a brother. This passage forbids failing to rebuke him, so its sin hangs on him, and then he suffers spiritually for it. This passage tells us that we mustn't take vengeance against a brother or bear a grudge on him. What's that got to do with stealing? This. The one thing you owe somebody, Romans 13 says, owe no man anything but to love one another. And so when you don't love him, and you show you don't love him by hating him and not rebuking him for his sin and bearing a grudge against him and avenging him, then you steal from him what is his due of love. You owe him that. You owe him that just as much as you owe a debt of money. But you don't give it. You steal it. Verse 29. Do not prostitute thy daughter to cause her to be a whore, lest the land fall to whoredom, etc. And there, the person is so covetous, so greedy, that he wants to make money, that he puts his daughter into the life of a prostitute so that he can make money out of her, his own daughter. That's stealing, in the covetous desire and in the use of her to make you money, so that she sins and you make money of your own daughter. And evidently that was done. And there are mothers and fathers who have suggested that as a good career move. Good career move. To make money. Verse 30. Ye shall keep my Sabbaths and reverence my sanctuary. So here we're dealing with a debt to God of keeping the fourth commandment. And the fourth commandment here is closely related with my sanctuary. Keeping God's Sabbaths is done especially, and this is the way our Heidelberg Catechism on the fourth commandment puts it, is done especially by attending diligently the public worship of the church. And so God is owed worship on the Lord's Day. God is owed attendance at the public worship and both services. And so when someone does not come, not now if they're sick or out of the country or something, but does not come, they're stealing from God. God says, I own that day, especially, and you must be there at the worship service, and you are a thief, because you said, that's my time, I'll do with it whatever I want. But it's not your time. It's not your time at all. You're not thinking straight. God's time. He hallowed that day by causing his Son to rise from the dead on the first day of the week. Verse 32. Thou shalt rise up before the hoary head. That is, man or woman with white or grey hair, because they're old. Honour the face of the old man and fear thy God. I am the Lord. There's a debt which is owed, that is respect and honour to the aged. And you steal from them if you do not give them the honour due to them as aged. 33 and 34 talks about abusing and vexing the stranger. You owe him respect and care to look out for him, but you don't. You rob him of it. And in fact, if that becomes totally grievous, you may even take advantage of the fellow and make money out of him. And 35 and 36 mention what we have also in the answer of question 110. You do no unrighteousness in meat yard, weight, measure. Use just balances, just weights, just ephah, and a just hin, because there are measurements of weight. Say you're weighing bananas. Measurements of length, you're buying carpet. Measurements that are liquid measures like milk. And then you have other sorts of dry measures too. And given the depravity of man and the lust to obtain more, the Bible is very specific. You've got to use the right measures. And then somebody say, well, maybe I can get away with a liquid measure of 1.9 litres, so it says, no, you've got to use the proper hin. Well, maybe, and so it keeps being specific to close the loopholes. And the issue here with all of these examples in the Catechism and from Leviticus 19 is most basically, God owns everything. In His wisdom and sovereignty, He has given such and such to your neighbour, such and such to that neighbour, and so much to you. Now be content what you have, because God gave it to you in His sovereignty and wisdom. And do not steal from your neighbour, or, which is the same thing, do not seek to acquire from him what he has unlawfully. Because you're stealing from God. Because you're impugning His wisdom. You're opposing His sovereignty. And of course you're showing that you are discontent with what you have, and that you are unthankful for what you have. It's not enough. God's holding out on me. He doesn't care for me. The only way I can get ahead and get what I really want, which He should have given me in the first place, is by stealing, that is, using trickery and deceit. And then the next part of answer 110 states that the 8th commandment also forbids all covetousness. You say the 8th commandment forbids all covetousness? But that's the 10th commandment. The point here is that the 8th commandment and the 10th commandment are connected. Sounds familiar? This commandment's connected to that one. Yeah, they all are, aren't they? And they're connected in this way, that covetousness, the 10th commandment, is the root or source of stealing or appropriating goods in an unlawful way, the 8th commandment. And you see that. It's not very difficult. When we're tempted to be economical with the truth, in order to obtain something, it's because we want it. We want it very desperately. We want it badly. 10th commandment. We want it badly enough to tell lies or to be economical with the truth. 9th commandment. In order to obtain that thing sinfully, 8th commandment. What does James say? He who breaks one commandment is guilty of all. Well, here's another way in which we can see something of this. These commandments are interrelated. And then our Reformed faith, summed here in this Lord's Day of the Heidelberg Catechism, gives us another way of breaking the 8th commandment, a way which might well have escaped our attention otherwise. The last clause, God forbids all abuse and waste of His gifts. All abuse and waste of His gifts. And here again we come back to the absolute sovereignty of God. He has given you all the gifts that you have, and in the measure that you have them. Time, money, resources, skills. And He says, use them. To use the language of one of the parables we looked at recently, occupy till I come. Do business with what I've given you. Use them in my service. Use them for my glory. Use them at home and in your family. Use them at work. Use them in the church. Use them with the saints and your neighbours.